most people who are dealing with anything that is fertility related know IVF is the only way to go, right? It's that's our kind of, gold standard that everyone runs to, or the freezing of the eggs, IVF, all these things that we believe are the ways as we extend our lives to become more fertile. Can you talk? I'm not even going to ask about your opinions of IVF, but maybe the comparison of this approach that you have with Austin Biotech versus one of that is the in-vitro
Right.
fertilization.
Okay. So for a start, the most important thing is what we do is not IVF. So we're not
Yes.
about having children. What we're saying is the ability to procreate keeps you more vital and healthy. With caveats, you have to screen for cancers. There's certain things there are caveats with that, without getting into full details. But you have to screen for certain markers and so on and so forth. And some people we can't treat all people. But to IVF, can you repeat exactly what you were trying to say to me again? I want to just say
I,
about
I would love for you to let the audience know about the difference. And
right,
again, I don't know your opinions on
right.
IVF, and I don't think we're here to just say it's awful, it's terrible, it's bad. I mean, maybe that's what you think of it, but more about that difference of someone saying, well, I was told to go down the IVF route. What is the benefit of going down this route that you
Right.
are a part of?
Okay. So um, we have a candidate coming to us who's exactly in this situation.
Hmm.
Without going into details, but she's still in fertility bearing age. Her husband is in great shape, everything, and they were recommended because she had turned 30 to go to IVF. She didn't need IVF,
Sure. Yeah.
so she just didn't need it.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that, technically speaking, after the age of 30, you do lose your fertility. But then saying that, there's always exceptions to the rule. My grandmother had her first child when she was 45, right? That was that's basically what she had. And she had it naturally. So be it. There are some people that are exceptions, but I think there are more exceptions than there are exceptions to the rule. All right. So in other words, that there are the situation with IVF is, if in doubt, immediately let's go to drugs and medicine.
Yeah.
And I think that is a mistake. It's because it's a bit like uh, what's it my th- there was a friend of mine who said that he said you're 3 cuts away from clown face, right? When you're doing aesthetic surgery, because I've got a little problem with my eye, and I do this, and then I do a second one, and the third one, and like that, right? And so it's a bit of an exaggeration, but the minute you start down that road, there's a very hard way to come back. So fundamentally, the difference between what we are and what IVF is about you have a need, a band-aid need, having children. We're going to max out your ovaries, produce these eggs, and then we're going to freeze them, and then we're going to artificially inseminate them, and we're going to do it this way. What we suggest is we're about keeping that functioning system working smoothly.
Hmm.
And so our body, so you could have rejuvenating procedure injected into your ovaries. And of course, when you say holistic, I want to correct you. Ours is very specific.
Okay.
So it's not about just IVing it into the blood and seeing where it
Right.
goes. We
Right.
actually attach it to specific follicular style or follicular organs, testes, ovaries, skin, as
Hmm.
opposed to dendrical, which is nerves and so on and so forth. Um, Whereby we actually can make a difference in a very specific moment. As I said, we stay in our lane, sexual function and reproduction. We're not doing anything else. We're not trying to make you into a midget into an NBA player, right? We're not trying to do that, or a giant into a gymnast. It's not going to happen, right? It just doesn't happen. This is what you have to stay, right?
Yeah.
So, in other words, we can keep your body running as smoothly as possible. Now, people have come to us who want to have children, uh, and we are very clear. It is not about we cannot. We're not a fertility company. We
Yes.
are a longevity company, a wellness company. But there is a byproduct that can allow you to have children the natural way, and it's a lot more fun. Let's be frank,
Hmm.
right? This is do it the old school way, right? So that thing is great, But we are looking in phase 2 at ways that we can improve that part of it, which is the fertility part. So I'll give you an example. We take so when you produce estrogen in the body, it comes from two parts of the body: the ovaries and the surrounding tissue, the uterus, and the adrenal gland and the surrounding tissue. Approximately the split is 60-40 in favor of the ovaries over the adrenal glands. And of the 60%, about 40% comes from the ovaries, and the other 20% or 15%, depends on, everyone's not exactly the same, but it's very general terms here, comes from the uterus. So, or the uterine lining. So when you have something called FSH, follicular stimulating hormone, as you age, your FSH levels increase significantly because it's sitting around doing nothing because there's no follicles to stimulate in the ovaries. So what we do is we take your stem cells, we process them to the certain size, our special mix and special source, which again, I'm not going to go into right now, but just again, it works. And we then reapply that to the correct parts of the ovaries to stimulate the follicles. And when I say we have an 85% success rate, that is what we have an 85% success rate of stimulating the follicles. What that does is reduce follicular stimulating hormone FSH down because the hormone's now being applied to the increased follicles in the ovaries, and estrogen or testosterone, but then estrogen is then produced, and suddenly there's much better feeling of well-being, there's more bodily fluids, there's less brain fog, there's better muscular control, there's higher libido, and they just look better. Bang, they feel better, that stuff. Yeah. So it's a win-win. That's what we're looking at. Now, the next stage to that, and this is the other thing as well, is once we apply it, it's a one-day procedure, it's an outpatient procedure. It does take 90 days to baseline it, and you have to be being checked on, but the actual procedure is about an hour in a clinic, and you're in and out. You arrive the day before and you leave the day afterwards. It's very simple. It's a lovely area, and you go down to Mexico. It's a great time, and everything's taken care of. It's wonderful. Or you can go to Europe too. But anyway, so then we have afterwards we monitor you for 9 months. But what we discovered was we thought it would only last 3 to 6 months. But the higher rated levels of hormones last up to 3 years. So we're like, wait a minute. For 3 years, I'm getting the elevated levels of hormones, so I don't need to take HRT. And by the way, HRT have to take 5 times as much, right? And there's the other beauty about this is, unlike taking drugs to stimulate the ovaries, there is no long-term damage to the ovaries, on the assumption that you don't have cancer markers, right? There are some assumptions, again, right? We have to be very clear about that. Right. So wait a minute. After 3 years, I can then re-up again, a one-day procedure, and I can last another 3 years. So let's think about this logically. What did we say at the beginning? 5 years longer you go through menopause, you live an extra 11 years. So let's just say we do 3 sets of 3, and it's 9 years. Let's keep it very simple and round it up to that. That's 20 years longer of living, 20 more years of life. So instead of you starting to start to become more decrepit or more aging at a rapid rate in your 50s, you're doing that in your late 70s or in your mid 70s. That's a big difference. And if we can improve this much in the last 4 years of scientific achievement, imagine what we can do in the next 20 years, right? Yeah. But the beauty about this is, on the assumption again of not having cancer markers, on the assumption of having certain genetic things that you don't have. Again, I want to be very clear about that. We're not gods, we're scientists, okay? But once you have that, you then can say, we can safely keep you youthful without having damage to the drugs, without having the clown face effect, right? Bang, you're straight out, right? And that's massive, because what you're doing is you don't have to take drugs regularly. Now, because IVF has a very specific need of having children, But the damage that can happen to taking lots of drugs is you can have excess weight gain, there's hormonal issues, there's hair growth issues, the damage to your ovaries is that blows them out. And I'm not, again, I'm not anti IVF. I just think that they're working with what they have. And as we know about liability, insurance, there's a lot of other areas. And again, this is not me criticizing, this is just me observing, right? So that's the difference between IVF. So what we're doing is we're a precursor to IVF. We can keep you as healthy as possible. And you might get lucky and get it done the old-fashioned way. You never know.
Right.
Again, that's a very big area. So in phase 2, what we're looking at now is one of the endpoints that we're looking at is egg quality production. But that is not what we're about. What we're about is, as I said, vitality and so on and so forth. So that's the difference. I don't know if that's explained it clearly enough.
Oh, that fully explains it. And, I totally understand that so much of this is first and foremost based on that area of getting you as optimized as possible and increasing that longevity factor within you that allows you then to avoid, I see IVS as that last chance sort of thing, just like I see a lot of drugs or surgery should be your final, not your starting point.
Yes.